has been talking about whether or not he was ever aware that Facebook was hacked. Let's talk about it in more detail, should we? Joining us, Toby Beresford, a social media expert and the chief executive of business data firm Rise.Global, and Frederic Catalhoynia, hopefully the data exploitation program lead at Privacy International. Hopefully I pronounced that more or less correctly. Thank you very much indeed, both of you, for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Ladies first, if I may, Frederic. We've been hearing a lot about Facebook over the last few days, of course, and also Cambridge Analytica. We've seen what the share price has done as far as Facebook is concerned. How does it recover from this?
I'm very happy that we're talking about this issue. I think third-party tracking, harvesting, tracking, profiling is a very big issue that we have been concerned of for a very long time. So while I think it is important to talk about the responsibility of the big platforms and the big tech companies, I think it's also the time to talk about a wider systemic problem in the way that people's data is being exploited.
OK, let's bring in Toby. Come back to you in just a second, if I may. Hello to you, Toby. A very good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. You know, some people, well, there's two schools of thought, isn't there? There's either you put your information into Facebook and you expect it to be kept private unless you friend people, etc., etc. Other people say if you put in all that sort of information into, you know, what is to all intents and purposes a platform that many people can access, you know, you're giving it away, aren't you?
Yes, yes and no. Of course, I think it's. We've had 10 years now of Facebook use, and we've got 2 billion people on that platform. I think the idea that we can just avoid Facebook altogether in order to protect our data is no longer really an option. I think the question really now is how do we make sure that our data is protected on Facebook, but at the same time, how do we make sure that we're being served information and advertising that's relevant to us? I mean, one of the great advantages of data sharing is that we are served adverts that mean something as opposed to adverts that don't. So there are two sides to this debate.
Do you have any answers to those two questions that you just posed?
Well, I think the key answer is to fund the Information Commissioner's offices properly. I think it's been grossly underfunded for many years. I mean, the fact that that we have a kind of a government committee is only now asking kind of very basic questions, as you saw in your interview, about how does data work, how does Facebook share data with its partners. I mean, it just shows just how far behind our government is, and particularly the Information Commissioner's office. I mean, I think they've been running for too long on the kind of if no one's complaining, we won't look into it, and I just don't think that's applicable. I mean, somebody like Christopher Graham, who was the Information Commissioner before, or Elizabeth Denham now, I mean, they should be looking at the Facebook policies. They should be having an argument with every social media network about data portability as soon as these policies are launched, not 10 years later when the cat is out of the bag.
Let's bring in Frederica again, should we? Hello to you again, Frederica. So the government, the authorities, should be doing more to protect us when we use Facebook. It's not down to us, it's down to the government to look after us better.
I think what this current scandal shows that law is lacking behind technology, which is usually the case. I think it also shows that there's a fundamental informational asymmetry between what consumers know and what companies know. And this is a real problem. So we still think of privacy in terms of the information that we put online, whereas in fact the problem is much wider. Through tracking, our behavior, our browsing history, our location data is being observed without us even doing anything ourselves. And I think Cambridge Analytica also shows how important profiling has become. So the reason they collected Facebook likes from Facebook was in order to build a model that could predict people's personality based on Facebook likes alone. So we think that all we share with Facebook is likes, but we don't understand that this can be used to model whether we are neurotic or whether we are open-minded. And the advertisement industry likes to say that this is all about showing us relevant ads, but what we're seeing here is that behind the ads that we see is an entire ecosystem that can be tapped into by all sorts of people. Political advertisement, foreign governments, and I think we need to talk about the fact that it is actually quite invasive to be shown ads based on my.
Are you?
Yeah, no, not really. I think the only thing we just have to have to be aware of is that advertising pays for journalism. Advertising pays for services like Facebook. If we didn't have the advertising industry, then we wouldn't have those services being paid for, and we'd have to find other ways of paying for it. So it's not a question of just saying all advertising is bad. Certainly, if advertising is more relevant, that's good. I mean, if I'm an Arsenal supporter and I've liked the Arsenal page on Facebook, I don't want to be served ads for tickets to Spurs games. I'd prefer to have ads for tickets to Arsenal games. So there is a value in having relevant advertising. I think the real kind of question here is that we all need to kind of understand a bit better what is going on when we share data. And of course, there has to be good privacy permissions. And of course, we have to know what data we're sharing with whom. I think that the real kind of issue here is that particular loophole that Cambridge Analytica were using wasn't closed down until 2014. So it was open for effectively 7 years, which is quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, whoever wants a flipping ticket for Spurs, let's be honest. Frederica, what can we do to protect ourselves then? What, as individuals, can we do to make sure that our information is not passed on to third parties, or literally we can't do anything? I went into a Nike shop the other day, and as I came out, I was getting emails about Nike products, and that was just because I had my phone in my pocket.
Absolutely. So I think as an organization, it is our policy. We don't want to blame the user, and we don't think everybody needs to be a data protection expert to have their basic rights protected. Yes, there are certain things you can do. You can limit the permissions you give to apps. You can look over your privacy policies, but ultimately that's really. And I would just like to follow up on what has been said about that we have to be careful about thinking about which data we provide. Again, when it comes to location data, when it comes to Wi-Fi tracking and facial recognition, even in offline retail, I think the issue is much wider than just Facebook or third-party apps on Facebook. So I think, yes, we need better enforcement, but at the same time, it is a problem that we need investigation and a team of journalists to work on an issue for an entire year to find out that a company has ignored the law.
Toby, what do you do to keep your information safe, your privacy?
That's a good question. So what do I do personally? So I'm pretty open about certain types of information. So I'll kind of be quite relaxed about, say, for example, my email address, my name, but then I'll be a little bit more secure over things which I don't particularly want to get into the public domain, like my address or whether I'm going on holiday or not. I certainly don't talk about holidays on social media. So I think there is I think all of us have to find the level of privacy that we're comfortable with, and that level of exchange of what data I give away in order to get a response. I would say as well, I think it's also important for the users of the data, so the companies, the advertisers. I think they should be signing up to a kind of a code of conduct and agreement. There are plenty out there. There's one, for example, at the Direct Marketing Association. So we've been marketeers and advertisers have been using data for a lot longer than Facebook, and there are codes of practice and principles that can be adhered to. So I think a lot of this is really about making sure that it isn't the Wild West online, that we are just applying the principles that we've already kind of decided and agreed upon.
Good to talk to both of you. Thanks for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Thank you. Still to come on the programme for you, what lies beneath, why the amount of plastic in our oceans could treble in the next decade. That to come in just a moment. Stay tuned.